Welcome to another video of the Positive Lifestyle Program for High Schools. In this session, we're going to be having a look at what it actually means to practically run a group. So John's here with me today, and we're just going to be chatting this through. We all know that to run a good program, we need planning, like the 6 P's of planning, prior planning, and preparation prevents poor performance, right? So thinking about the Positive Lifestyle Program, what's the kind of planning we'd like to put in place for that?
Well, I think the first thing people need to do is make sure that your self-knowledge is where it needs to be. Think about your experience of the topic at hand. Some people find it even really helpful to do the PLP program for themselves so they understand what the content is. Think about what are the appropriate personal stories you can share. You know, we bring our professional selves and we bring our personal lives to what we're doing. Even that doesn't necessarily mean sharing private stuff, but what are the personal stories you can share that will help your young people understand? And then the other side of that is think about, well, is there anything in this material that might be triggering for you based on your own experiences, and how will you handle that? So I think that's the first thing that when you think about preparation, you need to be thinking about, well, how well do I know myself? I think the second thing is to just plan well, to go through each part of the material, make sure you know what's in it, build your own confidence. You know, there's nothing worse than if you're trying to explain an activity or a game if you keep having to look down and read. So make sure you can tell the young people how to do something. And then think about any adaptations you might need to make the group, it fit your group. So, you know, if you've got a really sporty group, you might want to explore these ideas through some more physical activity. Or if you've got a really arty group, you might think about what are creative projects you could do to do this well. The reality is when you look at the material, you should be able to sum up each section in one sentence. You really have to know what you're talking about. And I would say lastly, just the most basic part of preparation is just making sure you've got everything you need. Now we try and make PLP for high schools low resource. There's not a lot of stuff, but sometimes there's cutting things out or printing things off or getting very basic supplies from around the place. So make sure you do that, get that prep. And if you have any issues getting materials, sourcing stuff, talk to your local member of the National Youth and Young Adults team. So that's what I'd be thinking about when I think about preparation.
Yeah, fantastic. So for you, maybe have a think through. Think about your week. Like, when is the best time in your week to prepare? Like, maybe it's the day before, making sure you read through the material and have everything ready. Obviously, we want to make sure you have that well in advance. So maybe just think through your week. When are you going to prepare and how much time you'll need to do that? So the next part we want to talk about is how do we build relationships? Like, we know for any program to really hit its stride, like, this is not just about going through the program and ticking off all the boxes. The real key part of this is the relationships we build and the way we connect with young people. So what's some advice or what's some tips that we can give about how to really effectively build relationships?
You're right in saying that relationships are the space for transformation to happen. And you know, I think the first thing when we think about how we build relationships with young people is how we show a real personal commitment to young people, how we're going to be there for them in consistent ways. And I think the good news is that if you're running PLP for high school, you're already there. You've already shown a level of commitment. Now it's just time to keep living that out. So make sure you're consistent, make sure you connect with them, make sure they know you're on their side. Even something simple like learning their names. Now I know that's hard. I'm not a person who's amazing with names, but whenever I go into a youth work setting, I'm like, I have to do whatever I can to learn their names. Sometimes it helps if you've got a list of people coming in advance and you can kind of work through the names, think about it, then start connecting those names to faces as they come. Even if you have to write stuff down, that's okay. You know, it's much more important that you learn people's names so you can connect with them. That's a real basic thing for building relationships. I think the next thing that's really important in any kind of youth work setting is that you have to be yourself. It's all you have.
Totally.
But the good news is it's enough, right? That actually, you know, young people don't want someone phony. Young people don't want someone necessarily cool or different. Like, you know, who you are is what you bring to the table, and that's what changes people. You know, you bring your professional experience, you bring your skills, you bring your knowledge, you bring your personal self, your personality, you bring your talents and abilities, your passion, but you can leave your private issues at the door. You know, that's not for young people, but what you bring is your personality and your care and your warmth, right? The reality is when we think about any setting where we're working with young people, is you want to be the kind of young person you'd like them to grow up to be.
Yeah,
and I think that's a good way to think about it, you know. And it sometimes can be very challenging when you realise that whether you like it or not, if you spend enough time with people, they're going to start being a bit like you anyway. So make sure you're doing the right thing. And lastly, I think at the heart of of building a relationship is you bring yourself to the table, and then there's getting to know them. You know, ask questions about their life and remember their answers. Be respectfully curious, you know. Don't bring judgment to the table. Like Ted Lasso says, be curious, not judgmental. I think the idea that like other people are interesting, and sometimes people don't feel interesting. So if you show interest, it makes them feel special. Figure out what's important in their lives, even if it doesn't seem like in the grand scheme of things it's that important, like what Pokemon card or whatever they got. You know, you as an adult might be like, that's not important, but if it's important to them, it should be important to you. And lastly, I'd say make an effort to learn the language, not so you can copy them and use slang and be cool, but just so you can kind of understand what they talk about. Even you'll be surprised when you go back into a high school setting how much of the language around what they do has changed. You know, when I was in school doing year 12 was called TEE, and now it's not called that, it's called ATAR or something else like that. You know, like there's all different things that changed in subtle ways, but if you can use their language, you'll connect a lot better.
Yeah. So just a question as we've been thinking through that. So think back to when you were a teenager. Who was an adult you admired who meant something to you? And if you didn't have someone like that, what kind of person would you have wanted or needed? So the last thing we're going to do is about how do we encourage young people to participate in the program. So how do we encourage that participation? How do we stop them just from being consumers to actually participating?
That's right. We know that high school positive lifestyle program for high schools is built on active learning. So young people need to be active. They need to be engaged. I think the first thing I'd be thinking about to encourage participation in any program, but especially in PLP for high schools, is to make it a safe space. Yeah. To make it physically safe, but emotionally safe.
So important.
That's right. The kind of space where people feel like they're able to share and they won't experience judgment, or or they won't be made fun of, or or they won't get told off. You know? So ease people in by asking questions that are built around their experience. You know, again, a lot of PLP for high school is built on young people's experience. So remind them that they're the experts, that they know more about their lives than I do, or that a facilitator might. You know, build up their confidence that way. You know, it's really important that we approach all of these situations without judgment. You know, that young people are going to come as they come, and we have to love them as they are. And you know, sometimes young people might say things that are shocking, but my advice is always to kind of just to match their level of intensity. So you know, if they're saying something and it's a big deal, then it should be a big deal for you. If they say something and they don't think it's a big deal, then you don't have to treat it like a big deal, I think. But it's really important that we come without that judgment. And then lastly, I think we need to celebrate sharing. We need to encourage it. When a young person is brave enough to speak their truth into the world, we want to celebrate that and congratulate them. So I think, you know, trying to do whatever you can to make these emotionally safe spaces, I think is really important. I think the second thing you want to do to encourage participation is to recognize you're going to need a diverse range of options, right? It's not just about talking. Now, we're sitting here, we're chatting, we're good at talking, right? But not every person is like that. So that's why in the materials, we've tried to have lots of different things they can do. There's games, there's activities, there's writing, there's drawing, there's thinking. You know, other young people might be creative. So try and find the things that work for your young people and take a range of approaches. I think that's really helpful. And again, it's not just about celebrating those who are talkative. It's about celebrating those, you know, when they've done a cool drawing in their book, or even just the fact that they've rocked up every week, or when they're listening well to others. Try and find contributions that you can praise that are outside the regular, or this person's talking and sharing. And the last thing I would do to encourage participation is to think about how I'm being observant as a facilitator. You know, make sure you're watching what's happening. Watching your, you know, who's involved and who's not involved. Maybe people who are involved too much at the expense of other people. You know, really trying to pay attention to what's happening, being really present as a facilitator. Sometimes that can be hard because you're like, I've got to make this session work, I've got to do. Try and find some space to slow down and watch what's happening.
Just read the room, right?
That's right, that's right. And that will help you when you do reflection to learn. So you can start to ask those questions. Oh, I noticed that you've gone quiet. Is this a difficult subject for you? Or, you know, it seems like you've got a lot to say about this. You obviously think really strongly. You know, you can ask those kind of questions. Also, the more you're watching them learning, you can start to understand your young people and their personality. You'll understand, oh, these are the people who are the talkers, and these are the people who are maybe a bit more reflective. These are the people who, you know, they'll love the games, but won't love the writing, all those kind of things. You'll also be able to learn maybe when a young person's not having a good day. You know, maybe a talkative young person comes and they're withdrawn, and that might be indicative of you needing to follow some stuff up. So I think there's nothing more important than, you're running a session, but you also have to be present in the session too. And I think that will help to bring young people in and to encourage their participation.
Yeah, that's great. So for you, think about what groups that you've been part of in the past. In what ways did it help you to contribute to those groups? What are the things that draw you in? Because I think as you reflect on those, you'll be able to be present and be able to help other people participate. Thanks for being with us today. If you've got any questions, just make sure you check out the website or contact your local member of the Youth and Young Adults team.